Alistair Darling, he joins us now live from Westminster. Mr. Darling, thanks so much for joining us. Now, you always said that this wasn't a permanent tax at the top. So do you agree with Ed Miliband that this is a budget for millionaires?
Well, I did say it was temporary, and I meant that. It would not have been my first port of call today. I'm also really puzzled at the arithmetic the Chancellor is using. According to his own calculations, which have now been published, they're going to lose about £3 billion by cutting the top rate. They then say they're going to get £2.9 billion back on some unspecified tax loopholes being closed, but also on the presumption that that the higher rate taxpayers, people who are better off, will pay more in stamp duty. Well, in income tax you lose it once you cut it. You don't buy a new house every day of the week. So the arithmetic there looks to me to be a little bit dodgy. Yeah,
but I did want to ask you about that. I mean, one of the big concerns about that 50p rate of tax is that the higher the tax, the harder you try to avoid it. Now, if you've got stamp duty up to 7%, does this not incentivise people to try and avoid it even harder? Or indeed, if it's foreign money, just not to buy in the UK, not to buy in London?
Well, I'm not sure a 7% tax, stamp duty tax, would put people off buying houses in London, because there are lots of reasons why you might why you might want to come to London, and I don't want to discourage people from coming from London. All I'm saying to you is that the Chancellor is going to reduce from next year the top tax rate to 45p, which he says is OK. I'm just questioning some of his arithmetic in relation to the rest of it, and the reason I do that, and why I said I wouldn't cut this rate as my first port of call when we're by no means out of the woods yet, is that it's quite clear that people lower down the income scale are going to be paying more one way or another. It's just become apparent in the last couple of hours that older people, for example, are going to be paying more. So it wouldn't have been my priority, but I've always made it clear that I think it's important that whatever any British government does, it's important that we attract people to come and do business in this country. We want people to continue to do that, but we've got to be fair with regard to our own people.
But what about the personal allowances? I mean, it's quite fair in that respect, isn't it, this budget?
Yeah, I mean, I have no problem with raising people's personal allowance. The big increase doesn't come in until the next financial year, so it's a little bit further away. And of course, in the meantime, a lot of people have had their incomes squeezed because of conditions here. Now, I think the big thing that worries me about this, which was rather, I only got the tail end of the piece beforehand, is that the growth forecasts for this country are only, 0.8% this year. A year ago, the Chancellor told us it would be at about 2.5%. And I think the question keeps coming back, not just in this country, but in other European countries as well. Where is the growth going to come from? We've got to get borrowing down, but of course you need tax revenues to do that. People are worried about unemployment. And although the Chancellor announced a whole battery of things today, most of which have been announced 2 or 3 times before, I'm not sure that's going to be enough to get things going.
Well, however, I mean, looking overall, we are avoiding a double dip. Inflation is going down. Corporation tax is going down, which is to be a boost for business. I mean, really, how could you have done it differently? Plan A is working.
Well, he's not on Plan A. He's been on Plan B since last autumn. This is not the plan that he announced in July 2010. I mean, he's borrowing £150 billion more than he said. And indeed, a whole lot of the things he announced this afternoon, which I welcome, boost to business and so on, additional help to specified sectors, the Conservatives turned their back on that when they got elected in 2010. They said they weren't going to do it. I welcome the fact they're now going to do it. I welcome the fact they're prepared now to look at increasing airport capacity in the southeast of England, for example, something that they said that they wouldn't do. So all these things, I think, are welcome. And indeed, the Chancellor is actually, if you look at the tables, he's spending more money this year than he actually intended one way or another. I just think that the whole rhetoric they employed when they got elected, I think, was misguided. It's not surprising, actually, that they're borrowing. They plan to reduce the structural deficit at more or less the same time that I intended to do it, despite the fact, that now it's 2 years later than they said at the time. So I think they could have done a lot more. I'm not complaining about everything. It'd be stupid to do so. But I do think the lack of growth is the thing that worries me the most of everything I've heard today.
OK, Alistair Darling, thank you very much indeed for sharing those thoughts with us.